Thanks, Chris. I'll straight away deep dive into something that we thought we could start with very early in your career, way back in 1995. What was interesting when we looked at your background really was you did creative writing, you were in product design, you got a job in IDEO, and literally you decided to take up something else and something that you really talk about, which is choose the most interesting choice, right? And that's something that we were really intrigued. And what are the real benefits, the goods and bads of having taken those decisions?
Yeah, so what you're referring to is one of the big turning points in my career. Well, it was the turning point at the start of my career, where instead of going to work for a company like IDEO, which was pretty conventional for somebody who graduated from Stanford in product design, I ended up taking a job with D.E. Shaw and Company to focus on internet startups. And the reason I did this is because I had a strong conviction about the power of the internet. So I had arrived at Stanford as a freshman, and when I was a freshman, we were part of the first class that had access to email. We were given email accounts. And so for the very first time, I learned, oh, you can actually send messages electronically. And at first, it was from the computer clusters. Eventually, they had Ethernet in our rooms, and we could connect our computers up to the internet. So it was quite a remarkable thing. And I had seen it grow over the time I was at Stanford, so that when I was graduating in 1995, it seemed to me that this was going to be one of the biggest things that ever hit the economy, the world of business, just the world in general. And so I wanted to be a part of it. And it turned out that I received a letter from D.E. Shaw inviting me to interview. And I almost threw it out because D.E. Shaw is a hedge fund. I didn't really have any desire to go into Wall Street. And my mother said, well, if they're a rich Wall Street company, then if you interview with them, they might fly you to New York first class. And it would be nice to see what first class was like, wouldn't it? And I said, well, that's a good point. And so I interviewed with them with no intention of taking a job, just so I could ride a first class flight. And instead, when I got there, I discovered that they were really interested in the internet. Like me, they were convinced it was going to be huge. Unlike me, they had billions of dollars. And so they said, well, we would love to have you consider working on some of our internet projects. And at that point, I flipped from not caring whether or not they were interested in me to really wanting to be a part of it. Now, interestingly enough, I think you could argue that it was a mistake in some ways still, because obviously the best thing to do under that circumstance is not to leave Stanford University and fly across the country to Boston to pursue a startup career, but rather to do so right in Silicon Valley. And that probably would have been, or depending on what I chose to do, might have been better, might have been worse, right? Suppose that I'd stuck around and been one of the first people to work at Yahoo. Who knows? But as it turns out, I went to work for D.E. Shaw, and I was able to get into the startup game, and that sort of kicked off my entire career. But the lesson to be learned here is, if you are looking out into the world, looking for change, looking for new things, well, then you can actually make a decision based on that conviction. And the reason why I believe it's important to look for change, to look for new things, is that's where the opportunity lies. If something is well established and predictable, then everyone knows how to compete there. But if you're going after something that's new and innovative, something where there's a lot of uncertainty, well, there's actually a lot of opportunity to create value if you believe that you can better predict the future, better understand what's going on, better learn from your surroundings, and then act accordingly.